We're back for our PFL Madrid predictions. This weekend, this Friday, from Madrid, Spain, the PFL finally delivers an MMA card, obviously a high-tier MMA card to the country of Spain, something where, UFC's got a Spanish champion and who's, may or may not be the biggest star in the sport, but, PFL is going to do it first, just like how Bellator went to Hawaii before the UFC did with Max Holloway, and just like how they went to South Africa with Dricus du Plessis before, well, not UFC didn't, the PFL didn't have Dricus du Plessis, but PFL went to South Africa before the UFC did with their South African champion. That's great. Anyways, folks, before we get into the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more PFL content here on the channel. The PFL is ramping up their schedule going forward, so we're going to have PFL predictions weekly on the channel on Monday. Next week, PFL Pittsburgh, Johnny Eblen, Brian Battle main event. 2 weeks after that, they have two cards, one in Africa, one in Chicago. We're going to be locked in with the PFL throughout the year, so make sure to continue to join us for these cards. Yesterday, we posted our UFC Fight Night Evloev versus Murphy full card predictions, so go make sure to check those out if you have not yet. And on Greedo Plays the Main channel, daily college basketball and daily NBA best bets. Okay, on to the first of our 12 fights from Madrid, Spain. We're going to kick things off in the women's strawweight division, as it is the PFL debut of the former UFC fighter in Victoria Dudakova. She will make her PFL debut against the juggernaut in Jacinta Austin. Austin is the UAE Warriors and Eternal MMA champion, if I'm not mistaken. She's won back-to-back fights going into this fight in PFL Madrid. As for Dudakova, former UFC fighter, had 4 fights over there in the promotion. Won her first 2 fights against some of the lowest level of competition you're going to see in both Estela Nunes and Jinyu Fry. Then lost to Sam Hughes by split decision, expectedly lost to Fatima Klein by TKO, and is now coming off a victory in Open Fighting Championship against Sedaf Kumova, where she won by first round submission. She gets Jacina Austin in this fight, who is well experienced in terms of UAE Warriors, and Eternal has fought an Octagon as well. All around, not a horrible fighter, getting Dudakova, who, remember, before her UFC run was fighting an Open Fighting Championship. Obviously, for this entire card, we're not going to have odds. I am recording this video a little ahead of time. I'll be honest with you, I'm recording this on Friday. PFL doesn't, there's no odds that drop for PFL until I believe it's Wednesday it is. If you want to see me start doing PFL best bets, I can do those as well. Those would probably have to come out on Wednesdays. If you want to see that, I can. I have never done it before, but Wednesdays obviously is when the odds drop, so that's when the best bets video will have to come out. It'd be late Wednesday night. I don't know, again, because we never get odds for these cards because the odds just come out late. Regardless, I think the odds are going to be fairly even on this one. I don't think Dudakova is going to be that big of a favorite. I think, yes, she has the UFC brand around him and the UFC name around her, but Austin has been able to win fights in, credible promotions outside of, obviously, a higher level promotion like the PFL. Hesitantly, I'm going to go Dudakova, but I wouldn't put money on it. I think Dudakova is able to win. Obviously, we saw her UFC run where she was able to beat Jinyu Fry and Estela Nunes. Not a horrible grappler. It's what she is not bad at. I mean, Austin, again, is going to be a fighter that's going to try to take you down as well. I think striking-wise, I think Dudakova is better as well. Again, it is a hesitant pick, I'll be honest with you, and I wouldn't, likely I would not put money on it, but I will take the former UFC fighter in Victoria Dudakova. She is still fairly young. Dudakova is 27. Again, we don't love the quality of her victories in the UFC, and it's not her fault. Again, she was matched up against 2 very low-level fighters in both Estela Nunes and Jinyu Fry, but she was able to win both those fights. I think she is able to get Jacina Austin. I think it will be a decision victory for her. I think Dudakova is a slightly better grappler, and striking-wise as well, I do think Dudakova should have the advantage. I mean, we have not seen a high-level striking game at all out of the juggernaut in Jacina Austin, so I'm going to go with the Russian fighter in Victoria Dudakova to take on the fighter out of Sydney, New South Wales in Austin. Give me Dudakova to kick off the card by unanimous decision. Maybe split, honestly. Does that fight not just feel like a split decision to you? Anyways, going on to our next fight, we move to a catchweight bout at 100. Oh, sorry, that's coming up later in the card. My fault. Got the order mixed up. Next up, our fight is in the featherweight division. Ignacio Campos takes on Matthias Duragin. We've got Spain versus France on this card. Campos 6-2 as a pro. The Frenchman in Duragin 4-2 as a pro. Matthias Duragin coming off back-to-back losses going into this fight. Won his first fight in PFL back in 2024 in PFL Europe. Beat Yassine Chateau by decision, then proceeded to lose a fight to Ibrahim Ibrahimov by unanimous decision. An expected result, Ibrahimov 9-0 as a professional. Duragin lost the fight by decision. And his last fight, though, going to AEC and losing a split decision to Kevin Perdomo. As for Ignacio Nacho Campos, 6-2 as a professional, is coming off a loss by knockout in WoW in La Noche de los Compañeros. I think I got that right. Lost a fight by fourth round TKO, fourth round knockout to Nikolai Grodziev. Had one fight in PFL and, like Matthias Duragin, lost to Ibrahim Ibrahimov. So now both these fighters are going to fight each other. I think Campos should win. I think Campos does have the advantage in terms of a grappling perspective. On the feet, I do think it is fairly evenly matched, even though I would say Nacho Campos does have the advantage up there. Grappling-wise, though, we have not seen we've not seen a developed or great or an advanced or at all a decent grappling game out of Duragin so far. I think that's where Campos likely does have his advantages in this fight. Campos 5'10", Duragin 5'8", again, both fighting at 145 pounds. Also, something to note, too, I mean, again, you don't always love to look at this, but, you know, in close fights, it is the PFL. Sometimes the PFL judging is iffy. And I understand, technically it's the state athletic commissions. I don't know. I just feel like weird things happen sometimes with the PFL's officiating. Refereeing. Just don't know. They're judges. I'm going to go Campos. If it's a close fight, I think he will probably get the nod because he is in Spain. Again, it is the first Spanish fighter on this card, so I guarantee you the crowd is going to be on his side. And that thing, that does sway judges too, right? Like, a fighter, if Campos barely lands a jab, the crowd may go crazy. Again, I just don't know how the Spanish crowd's going to react. I mean, this is their first PFL card, right? So maybe they're going to react in a big way, obviously, but I assume everything Campos does is going to be treated as a big deal with that crowd. And again, I'm not saying, 100% that's going to sway the judges, but I do think it matters. Again, Duragin is 4-2 as a pro, is coming off back-to-back L's. I don't love the fact that Campos just got knocked out in his last fight, but he did fight a guy who, SPG Ireland fighter, and Nikolai Grodziev, who's won 4 or 5 fights in a row. He is the WoW champion. Could be worse, honestly. The other losses for Campos, the other loss, again, is Ibrahimov back in 2024, and that does happen to be his only PFL fight as of now. Again, going to fight on Friday night. Duragin, again, the Ibrahimov fight, lost in 2025, lost again in 2025 to Kevin Perdomo, who's win over Yasin Shatnau. Why was that fight made? I didn't get to talk about this. He fought Yasin Shatnau, who fought Mark Ewen prior to Duragin in his PFL run. This is a guy who fought Ewen at 2-3-1, then got another fight against Duragin at 2-4-1. Why? Why did this guy get multiple fights in the PFL with a losing record? He's a plus 70 dog against Duragin, so obviously Matthias won the fight. So I do think it's kind of a skewed as well, 1-1. It might as well beat 0-1, obviously, because a lot of guys who are just at borderline PFL level would obviously be able to beat a guy who is 2-4-1, who's been nothing but a can so far in his PFL run. So again, this should feel like it is an easy opportunity. I wouldn't say it's an easy opportunity for Ignacio Campos, but it's an opportunity where he should be able to win. His grappling should play a huge advantage in this fight, and I don't want to put any weight legitimately at all into Matthias Duragin's only victory in the PFL Smart Cage. So I'm going to be going with Ignacio Campos to win at home in Spain. I believe, like the first fight of the night, this one will likely be a decision. Give me a unanimous decision victory for Ignacio Nacho Campos. On to our third fight of the night, we move to a matchup now between Claudio Pacella and David Mora. This is, again, I got the order mixed up. This is the catchweight bout at 165 pounds. Pacella, the Italian fighter, taking on the Spanish David Mora. Mora coming off his last MMA fight over a year ago. However, he's been fighting more recently in bare knuckle fighting. Well, I guess there's just one fight he's had. In 2025, had a BKFC fight where he lost by third round TKO. He is now returning to mixed martial arts since his last fight in MMA, which was also a loss back in November of 2024. He's getting Claudio Pacella, who, if you look at his record, you say, oh, he's 6-3 and 3-2 in the PFL. He's a lot better again than that 6-3 record indicates. His entire PFL, just MMA career has been in the PFL, and he's been fighting nothing but somewhat high-level guys in the Professional Fighters League. I'm not too concerned. Pacella's entire run in PFL Europe goes as follows. First fight, you get Patrick Habaroa. What you gonna do? Right? Habaroa is gonna fight, and that was Habaroa's second ever pro fight. But Habaroa, highly touted prospect, he's 8-0 as a pro, and he's gonna fight Benson Henderson in Brussels. And what is that, in May? How did they get Benson Henderson to come out of retirement for that? I thought I witnessed Benson Henderson's last ever pro fight in San Jose, California in Bellator. But no, he's just going to come back and fight Habaroa. I guess what Henderson was supposed to fight in GFL, wasn't he? Who apparently GFL coming back now? I guess. I don't know why Benson Henderson, I mean, I'm sure they offer him a lot of money to take that fight, but why is he doing it, man? Habaroa is going to knock him out in the first round. They're just trying to build this Habaroa legacy by beating up on a lot of washed former MMA legends. Anyways, Pacella's first fight in the PFL, it's Habaroa. Who cares? He goes the distance with Habaroa. And if you've been watching Habaroa recently, he's knocking everybody out. You knocked out Danny Roberts in the first round, knocked out Kevin Jusay in the first round, both back-to-back UFC fighters. Obviously not legends like and former champions like Benson Henderson, but UFC fighters, and Habaroa has beaten them both in the first round. Pacella goes the distance with Habaroa. Now it is Habaroa's first fight in the PFL, his second fight as a pro. But I do think it still matters a little bit that Pacella was able to go that deep into the fight with him. Then he comes back, beats Mark Ewen by unanimous decision. I think Mark Ewen sucks, so there's that. More on that in a second. I just don't think the guy's very good. Whatever. Beats Oscar for what he's supposed to be and for what the PFL's kind of hyped him up to be, obviously, out of Scotland. Pacella then beats Oscar Owensworth by unanimous decision, then beats Gavin Hughes by unanimous decision, and runs into Alexander Chizoyev in his last fight, loses a close split decision. That's okay. Pacella should have enough to beat David Mora, who I'm not impressed with. Not a very good chin at this point of his career, losing in BKFC, getting knocked out multiple times in professional mixed martial arts, obviously. Don't love the inactivity in MMA specifically. Again, that's just what's going to happen when you fight BKFC. But it's a guy 10-6 as a pro, first fight in the Bellator Smart Cage, but a loss in BKFC in his last fight, and a loss prior to that in mixed martial arts as well in War, losing by first round knockout. Yeah, Claudio Pacella should have his way in this fight. I think, he will have a grappling advantage on the feet as well. I don't think he's that far off of Mora. I think any way, personally, that Pacella wants to win this fight, he should absolutely be able to get it. Obviously taking on a Spaniard in this fight, so the hometown crowd will be in favor of Mora. Mora is the bigger fighter. Obviously, they're both going to be at catchweight 165, even though both their last pro fights, I believe, were at 155 pounds. This one will be at 165, and that might make it a little bit difficult on Pacella, at least strength-wise, against David Mora, because Mora is going to be the bigger guy. I assume this catchweight is for him. He's 6 feet tall. Pacella, again, 5'9". But I am going to side with the SBG Ireland fighter and Claudio Pacella to pick up the victory. I do just think he's the more well-rounded fighter, than Mora, and I am going to pick against Spain in this fight. Give me the Italian, Claudio Pacella, who obviously trains now out of Dublin, Ireland, to pick up the victory over David Mora, now going to 4-2 in the PFL with now a 7-3 professional record. Again, don't let that current record distract you from the fact Pacella is talented. He's just fought a tough amount of guys so far in the Professional Fighters League. Okay, on now to our third fight of the night. We move to a matchup between Reda Abdellaoui versus Ernesto Schisano. We have got Italy versus, I believe, Morocco it is in this fight. Yes, Italy versus Morocco. However, Reda the Lynx Abdellaoui does train out of Spain, but same can be said about El Porto and Ernesto Schisano. Schisano from Italy, but trains out of Spain. So we've got Spain versus Spain in this fight. Abdellaoui 3-0 as a professional. El Porto Ernesto Schisano 5-1 as a pro. Yet the 3-0 Reda is expected to be the winner in this fight. I will tell you, Tapology doesn't tell the entire story, but Reda is being picked by 91% of voters on the platform, as only 9% are taking Schisano. From what I've seen out of Reda, yeah, is pretty talented. This is a guy who had a very long amateur career, and again, I say this all the time. Like, you've heard Daniel Cormier and Dominic Cruz talk about this at length. Like, there's no shame in getting 1 million amateur fights under your belt, because they just don't matter. They don't count. But as soon as you turn pro, that loss, if you take a loss in your first fight or any time in your pro career, that loss sticks with you forever. But amateur losses, they're 3-minute rounds. You're not going to take as much damage. You might as well get as many of those as possible. So that's what Reda did. He had, I believe it was 22 amateur bouts, makes his professional debut in 2025, wins his first fight by rear naked choke against Mora Gregory in Brave, then goes to Road to Fight, wins a fight by first round TKO, and then most impressively, his last fight is in LFA, wins a second round TKO over Alexandre Carol, a French fighter. But a good victory for Reda, 3-0 in the year of 2025, will make his PFL debut now in 2026 in just his 4th professional fight. And he will be drawing Ernesto Schisano from Italy, coming off a win in War, that Madrid, or Spanish-based promotion. Again, he is from Madrid, or from Spain himself now. Won a fight by first round TKO. We got 6 pro fights under his belt as a whole. His only losses to Stefan Sebastião Lumbayo. Back in 2025, lost a decision for the War Championship. That was a fight that went all 5 rounds, but ultimately Schisano did lose. I am going to buy in a little bit to the level of prospect that Reda is supposed to be, right? This is a fighter who 3-0 so far. He has his 3rd ever fight in LFA. He's fought in Brave. Right away, that is a positive, right? Because you get a lot of these fighters who come up the regional scene, you'll see them that just don't fight at any high-level promotions. They fight at the lowest level promotions possible, and they just build their record any way they can. I'm not telling you Reda, again, has fought nothing but juggernauts up until this point in his MMA career. Again, he's only had 3 fights, but fighting at the caliber of promotions that he has in Brave, and then going to America, fighting your 3rd fight in LFA, or an American promotion, it was in Spain, but again, American promotion in LFA on Fight Pass does mean something. And the fact that, again, he won that fight pretty convincingly in the 2nd round by TKO, was able to get on top, land elbows and bombs from the top position, and obviously won the fight. That is impressive. Ernesto Schisano, again, a much more experienced guy, and the older fighter, if I'm not mistaken, as well. I don't know if we have the age directly for Reda. I believe he's fairly young. Ernesto Schisano is 33. How much better are you getting at 33 years of age? I mean, obviously, again, that's not old. Obviously, it's not, not to the point where you can't be competitive anymore. Obviously, nowhere near that. But, I do just believe that the Moroccan Spaniard and Reda, the Lynx Abdellaoui, should win the fight. Everything I've seen so far out of his 3 pro fights have been impressive. I have to imagine he's going to carry that into a victory here in Spain, in PFL. I do think he wins the fight by unanimous decision. Again, we've seen wrestling. We've seen some decent striking as well. I expect it to be the wrestling, though, that should have an advantage in this fight against a striker of the caliber of Schisano, at least what we've seen so far in WoW and those other regional promotions. I believe the wrestling is going to, and the grappling is going to take a big advantage here for Reda Abdellaoui in this fight, and I think he should be able to beat the Italian in El Porto by unanimous decision. We move on now to our 5th fight of the night, and we go to a matchup in the lightweight division between Gino Van Steenis, obviously fighting on home turf in Spain, even though he's a Spaniard, obviously, who trains in the Netherlands, taking on the Scottish Mark Ewen. Obviously, Gino Van Steenis, the brother of Costello Van Steenis, who is in the main event, obviously defending the Middleweight Championship against Fabian Edwards. Gino Van Steenis, though, from Holland/Spain, gets this fight against Ewen. Both of these fighters 7-2 going into this fight. And I mentioned it earlier, I just don't think Mark Ewen's that good. We've seen him throughout his entire Bellator/PFL career, and he's 3-2 across both promotions. Every time he gets a half-decent guy, though, he loses. And he's been booked he's been booked against guys he's supposed to beat, and then as soon as he gets a somewhat decent guy, he will lose, right? But I mean, lost to Alexander Chisaev in a fight that he was favored to win. He gets knocked out 99 seconds. Fights Claudio Pacella, loses the fight by decision. And some of his other fights have just been straight layups. Again, fought Yassine Chayao, who was 2-3-1 at the time. Same guy who got a 2nd fight in the PFL for some reason, whatever. And they recently just booked Mark against Sebastian DeFranco in his last fight. And he subbed DeFranco in the 1st round. But I just feel like this is the case of a guy who's supposed to be, a highly touted prospect who just hasn't really turned into what the PFL wanted him to be. But now they give him another big opportunity fighting Gino Van Steenis, obviously brother of Costello Van Steenis, younger brother, if I'm not mistaken, right? I'm pretty sure he's the younger brother. Yeah, 5 years younger than Costello Van Steenis. A huge opportunity in Spain. They give the Scottish fighter to go on the road and pick up a win. I'm going to go Gino Van Steenis. I'm going to go Gino Van Steenis to win because, again, that's just been the story of the career so far of Mark Ewen. He gets a big shot, a big fight, and he just doesn't, it doesn't come to be. He goes out there and he gets chinned. That's what happened against Chisaev. Pacella beat him by decision. And that's the thing, too. So, unlike Costello Van Steenis can strike, do not get me wrong. He's a very willing striker and won rounds against Johnny Evelyn in that last fight in Africa, striking. But Gino Van Steenis is not going to have that straight grappling background like Costello Van Steenis does in terms of an offensive grappling attack. It's in the bag, and from what I've seen out of Gino Van Steenis, he can, he will be able to stuff takedowns, and it's not like he's just going to get, dominated wrestling in this fight, but he should be able to keep the fight in ranges that he wants it to be in. Obviously, he wants to stay and strike in this fight, and he should be able to get that in this bout. I do believe he's going to be able to stuff the takedowns out of Mark Ewen, who, again, has been a credentialed grappler so far in the PFL. Last 2 wins have been by Darce choke. Obviously, it is the submission by choice. Hell, when you fight a 2-3-1 guy, you should probably get whatever submission you love in that fight, and that's what Ewen did, but I do believe Van Steenis will be able to keep this fight on the feet, and I do think he'll find that knock. I think he'll win by decision. Again, we've seen Mark knocked out by Chisaev. Pacella beat him by decision. I'm going to say this one's going to go to decision as well. And you also have to consider, too, okay, fight goes the distance. The Van Steenis name, his brother's in the main event. He is from Spain, even though they both train in Holland/the Netherlands, whatever the hell the country they're called. They're called a million names. Still, hometown advantage in Spain. If the fight is close, which I believe if it's on the feet, it does have the possibility to be, I think Van Steenis can win. And I think he will win. I think it's going to be a close bout. I think it'll be a close decision. But again, if it is that close, they are going to side with Steenis. They're going to side with the Spaniard. Both these guys are huge for the weight class. The Scottish fighter is six feet tall. Obviously, the Spaniard / Dutch trained fighter and Steenis is 6'1". These are two big lightweights. But I do believe Steenis is able to pull away and get the victory. I have to imagine he's going to be an underdog. Maybe not. I think this fight's going to be about even, at least on Tapology. 63% of voters are taking Ewen. 37% of voters are taking Gino Steenis. I'm going to go with the Spaniard, aka the Ghost Assassin, Gino Steenis, to pick up a huge win. Both these guys 7-2 coming into the bout. I believe Steenis is the one to go to 8-2, picking up a unanimous decision victory in the lightweight division. On to our next fight, our fifth fight, and we go to a fight between two Spanish fighters in Borja Garcia and Rafael Calderon, both Spanish fighters at the 125-pound weight class. It is rare that PFL does fights at 125. Have to imagine they're going to start opening up everything now with the PFL in terms of every weight class, because if you know, obviously, their old format where they just did tournaments, it was only a specific amount of weight classes that were available for fighters to fight at. We talked about this yesterday. Also, real quickly, plug in the UFC video. We talked about it yesterday with Chanel Dyer's UFC debut in England. She's fighting now at 115 pounds in the UFC, just because, well, in the PFL, they only had 125, and she had to fight in the PFL Europe's flyweight division. So now, again, at her natural weight class down at 115 in the UFC. So I believe now, though, the PFL is going to be a lot open for every weight class. I have to imagine they're going to crown a champion in every weight class, even though technically right now there is no 125 belt in the PFL. But I got to think they're eventually going to make one because, well, if you want to function as just the competitor for the Ultimate Fighting Championship, you kind of just have to have a champion in every weight class just like them. So you can kind of say and stake a claim that, oh, we have the best champion, or we have the best fighter in every single weight class in mixed martial arts. I have to imagine they're gonna try to at least have a champion in every single weight class, or just a weight class in general. Anyways, flyweight matchup here between, again, two Spanish fighters in Borja Garcia, 26-year-old fighter, 6-2 as a pro. Again, like many others on this card, have fought in that War regional promotion in Spain. I believe it's Madrid-based, I think, but it's Spanish-based, definitely. Garcia, 3-1 in that promotion, did fight for the championship, or defended the championship, and lost recently in August of 2025, but is coming off a rear naked choke finish over Alessio Barbara in his last fight, again, by first round rear naked choke. As for Calderon, an older fighter, 30 years of age, coming off a knockout loss in his last fight in WoW, got knocked out in the first round in 82 seconds. He's 6-2 in WoW. That's been his entire pro career. I would say not expected to win this fight. I mean, we're going to see Garcia likely look to grapple here. Calderon, I guess, a willing striker, but I do believe Garcia is going to have the clear advantage grappling-wise in this fight. The question is, will he be able to get a finish? I do think, again, what I've seen out of both these guys, Garcia does look like the more skilled fighter, and he is the younger fighter too. Again, not like Calderon's not still improving at 30 years of age, but I tend to side with the 26-year-old here in Garcia rather than the 30-year-old in Calderon, especially because, well, I think Garcia looks better as well, too. I'm going to take the younger fighter who should be more able to obviously push a pace in this fight. Again, not that 30 is old at all. It's not even close. But I'm going to go Garcia to win this fight. Not much known about these fighters other than obviously their fights in War and WoW respectively. I think Garcia is going to get it done. And from my knowledge and from what we've seen again today, because we're looking at as much Spanish-based regional MMA as possible, if I'm not mistaken, the two main regionals in Spain are WoW and War, right? I could be wrong, but those are the two that we keep seeing time in and time out. And I've been looking at fights and looking at their, looking at fighters, looking at their fights. Those are the two promotions that always pop up, are War and WoW. So again, Garcia coming out of War, Calderon coming out of WoW. I'll be honest with you, I don't know which promotion is better. I'm not well tuned into, international regional MMA. Obviously, I am in America, but not outside America. I'm just not. I'll be honest with you. But again, obviously, we watched film, we watched these fighters. I like Garcia more in this fight. I do believe the wrestling and the grappling is going to play a huge factor in this fight for him. Garcia, again, 6 professional victories. Half of those have come by submission. Calderon, 6 victories as well, 4 by decision, 2 by knockout. I'm going to have to go with the younger Spanish fighter. Again, Spain is guaranteed a victory in this one, but I'm going to go Borja Garcia to beat Rafael Calderon, and we're going to take him to win this fight by unanimous decision. I do believe the wrestling is going to play a huge factor in this one, and that's likely where Garcia gets it done against the older fighter, yet, not more experienced. They're both obviously 6-2. I'm going to go Borja Garcia to win the fight again by unanimous decision. On to our next fight, we move to, I believe, the final prelim. I believe it is, as it is a matchup between 2 bantamweights, and Kevin Cordero and Luciano Pereira. Two fighters making their debuts in the PFL. I'll just be honest with you, this one should be over fairly quickly. Okay, I'll give you the pick right now. To me, it is the fighter from Uruguay in Luciano Pereira. He should win this fight by first round knockout. So whenever you see a fighter fighting at 135 pounds at 5 feet 3 inches tall, you know they probably have to hit like a truck because you're holding all of that, obviously holding all that weight, and there's a reason you're not down at 125 because, not like Pereira is just fighting at 135 for this opportunity in the PFL, say he's a traditional 125. No, he has fought at 135 pretty much from what I've seen his entire mixed martial arts career. And for a guy who fights at 125 pounds, having 10 knockouts, oh, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. There's a reason this is the featured prelim on this card. It's because they expect violence, and Luciano Pereira is pretty good from what I have seen. His only loss ever comes by a need to a downed opponent back in Samurai Fight House in May of 2023. It's just straight up an illegal knee knockout win or knockout loss, DQ loss, in about a minute and 30 seconds. Other than that, Pereira has gone through every single opponent that he has had, and I believe this is a really great signing for the PFL, getting a guy from Uruguay who's come off of, I believe he fights in Brazil, though, if I'm not mistaken, Brazil and Uruguay in terms of the regional promotions that he fights in, but it's a great signing for them for a guy, again, who just goes out there and finishes fights. And, unfortunately for Kevin Cordero, who is, very experienced at 26 years of age, was supposed to be fighting Jake Hadley on this card. He last second runs into a guy who is probably going to knock his head off his shoulders. I'm just going to be honest with you. This is a fight that Luciano Pereira is expected to win. He's going to go out here and knock out the hometown guy early. And it's a fight that you hate to draw if you are Cordero, but it is what it is. This is a fighter that has lost 3 of 4 going into this bout against some familiar names, like lost to Franz Malabo, obviously PFL Europe's own, or actually now PFL Africa's own in Franz Malabo, lost in Combate to him in December of 2021, then proceeded to lose a split decision to Alison Marrera in Fight 2-1 promotion, and then lost in Brave as well right after that to Levan Kurtadze. Is coming off a victory in Total MMA Gran Canaria, okay, where he beat Adriano Ramos by second round knockout as a flying knee, but as a whole, the body of work just isn't there when you're losing 3 of 4 going into your PFL debut against a guy who just hunts the knockout. Yeah, you likely have a problem. I will say, again, Cordero will probably look to get this fight down to the ground. 7 of his 15 victories do come by submission, and I have to assume as well you are going to see, Cordero be a willing striker on the feet too, but yeah, Pereira is going to win this bout. And again, this is why the PFL put this in this spot, right? Cordero is a hometown guy. He's from Spain. They expect violence in this fight, and you match him up against a guy who's done nothing but knock people out so far in his career in Pereira. It should be great. Someone's going to lose. Obviously, someone has to lose, but someone's going to get finished in this fight. But I got to go with Pereira. On top of that, too, if the originally scheduled fight happened in Jake Hadley versus Kevin Cordero, I'd be taking Hadley by outclassing Cordero by unanimous decision. I think the skill gap would be huge in that fight. That's my thing with Pereira. We don't know truly how skilled he is. He's just beaten up on a lot of guys so far in the regional scene that, haven't been horrible, but guys that, yes, he's expected to beat, obviously, because he hits like a truck at 125 pounds, and yes, he's technically has a DQ loss, but really, the guy's undefeated. Nobody's ever beat him in the cage before. I don't expect the Spaniard and Kevin Cordero to be the first. I'm going to go Luciano Pereira to win his first fight in the PFL. Again, you have to hit like an absolute truck if you fight at 125 pounds, or 135 pounds, at 5 foot 3 inches tall, and I expect Pereira to win the fight against Cordero. I'm going first round knockout for the Uruguay fighter, again, coming into Spain and picking up his first win in the PFL against Cordero. On to our next fight in the heavyweight division as we go to the main card opener between Linton Vassell and Denis Goltsov. These two guys have history before. They have fought, and they will do it again. It was so good we needed one more rematch, or just, a rematch in general between Denis Goltsov and Linton Vassell. And I ask, why? Whatever. Okay, Linton Vassell did not fight in 2025. He was booked for another rematch, actually, in 2025, where he was supposed to fight in the heavyweight tournament, fighting Oleg Popov, who he had lost to in the playoffs in 2025, back when the PFL obviously used to do that format, as Vassell obviously was a playoff fighter. He lost to Denis Goltsov, won that horrible fight against Valentin Moldavsky, and then lost to Popov in the playoffs. As for Denis Goltsov in 2024 specifically, he won his first fight against Vassell, then beat Thiago Santos, entered the playoffs as the number 1 seed, fought Tim Johnson, won, and then fought Oleg, actually he was the 2 seed, then beat Tim Johnson and beat Oleg Popov in the championship fight by triangle choke in 3 minutes. He then gets to fight Corey Anderson in a fight that isn't for the heavyweight title. It was just a fight that happens, but the PFL's been, unifying all these belts, and Goltsov, they just said, screw your belt, we don't care. Go fight Corey Anderson. and he loses to Corey Anderson. So, yeah, I don't know why I get why they did that, but it's confusing. Anderson went up to 265 pounds, and then he beat Durazan Yagishinamirdov for the 205 belt, and Anderson's not staying at 265. Again, I know Vadim Nemkov's their champion, but Goltsov never got a chance to fight for the belt at 265 pounds after he won it, and then Popov's now the champion because he beat Romanov at a split decision, but why in the PFL rankings is Popov ranked ahead of Goltsov? I don't get it. But this is 4 versus 5 in the PFL rankings. Sorry, 3 versus 4 in the PFL rankings, as Goltsov is 3, Vassell is 4. And I ask you this question: what changes from the first fight? Denis Goltsov is a better grappler than Vassell. I think he's stronger than him. Striking-wise, I like Goltsov. Vassell's 42. How much better is he getting? What improvements are you making from that first bout? None. I don't understand why the fight's being made. I'll be honest with you. Denis Goltsov, first round TKO. That second round TKO. It'll take him a round, but a round less than that initial matchup. I just believe Goltsov got screwed in this entire equation. Yeah, he lost to Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson's really good, and that just continues to prove my point we talk about all the time. We talk about it especially, again, at length with our UFC videos, but fighters at light heavyweight can easily go up to 265 and win. They can. The best 205 pounders will dominate the best for the most part, good 265 pounders, because heavyweights don't really rely on the most skill. And I will say, Goltsov, again, is not one of those typical fat heavyweights. He gets finishes. He can wrestle you. He can take you down. He will look to punch once he gets on top, right? He can drop you on the feet too, but it's a lot of wrestle. I'm going to take you down. I'm going to dominate you. Like the Thiago Santos fight, right? Didn't let Santos breathe in that fight. Took him down immediately. Started obviously landing bombs from back control. I have to imagine this is what the Vassell fight is. I think Goltsov will be able to take Vassell down at will, and eventually, yeah, he'll find that finish. I think it'll take about a round and a half, and that's why I'm going second round TKO for Denis Goltsov. But yeah, this one is not too hard of a pick for me, obviously. I just don't know why they're doing it again. Again, Vassell's not fought since 2024, took the entire 2025 off, was booked to fight Popov in the first round of the tournament, or yeah, the bracket. He had to withdraw from the fight. He hasn't fought since August of 2024 against Popov, and now again for Lenton Vassell, you're 42 years of age. I don't know how much I can put into him fighting again, and I think Goltsov is going to win. If Goltsov won the fight 2 years ago when Vassell was 40, how's Vassell going to be in when he's 42? Unless he lands a bomb, because Vassell can do that, obviously. Look at the first Vatin Moldavsky fight. And I feel like these PFL Tour heavyweights just keep cycling through each other. They keep fighting each other over and over again. I don't know, like Moldavsky, Vassell, Goltsov, Popov, Vassell, whatever. I'm going to go Denis Goltsov to beat the 42-year-old Lenton Vassell. I'm going to go Goltsov second round TKO. I could see the first round, though. Next up, we move on to a matchup in the I don't know why this is above. Why is this above Vassell Goltsov? Whatever. In the welterweight division, we've got Franco Tenaglia versus Yacine Najid. Okay. I don't know why Najid got another fight in the PFL. He's 9-5 as a pro. He has not won a fight in 4 years. And he's 40. Take it on Franco Tenaglia. Okay. I'm going to go Tenaglia to win the fight pretty easily. This is an Argentinian fighter who trains out of Spain, and you and I both know now the reason, obviously, why this fight's on the card and why it's so high up on the card. He's from Spain. They needed to get another Spanish fighter on the main card. Obviously, there's going to be 2 more in Duque and Costello and Steenis, obviously, in the main event. But here's another one as Tenaglia gets Yacine Najid. This one should be over pretty quick. I'm going to go first round knockout victory for El Rey de la Calle. Isn't that... Wait, is that cattle? No, it's definitely not. It's definitely not cattle. Let me pull up the Google Translate machine real quick. Oh, it's street. Oh my goodness. That's bad. I should know that. My Spanish knowledge should be better than that. He's the king of the street. That's a fire nickname. I'm not going to lie to you. I really thought El Rey de Calle meant king of the cattle. Yeah, it's bad. Anyways... Franco Tenaglia, again, 5-2 as a pro, but is coming off 3 consecutive victories, right? He is Argentinian, but does train and fight out of Spain, and that's a result of his last couple fights. He's been fighting, in Spain for MMA, in War, 3 fights in a row in that promotion. I will say he's fought bums. Last 3 fights in War, 2-5 fighter, 0-0 fighter, 0-0 fighter. So maybe WoW is the better promotion over there in Spain. Again, I'm not completely sure. But Tenaglia since then has fought back-to-back fights. Well, he had a boxing fight that he won, and then he just fought in BKFC, beating Ben Bonner in BKFC in October of 25 over in Rome, Italy. So there's that. He's been an active fighter in terms of mixed martial arts. Again, there's been some pause in his MMA career because he has fought in BKFC multiple times, fought in BKFC back for the BKFC Championship in April of 2024, then fought in BKFC again, defend the title against Tony Soto, and then why did he not, again, I don't keep up with BKFC like this, why did he not still have the title a year later? Did he vacate to go fight MMA? I could not tell you. He withdrew from a fight, so did they strip him? Again, I don't know how BKFC works. All I know is the BKFC is the same promotion, obviously, that Connor kind of runs, same promotion that didn't their version of Dana White like not pay guys because they had a boring fight? I don't know. Again, BKFC to me is just kind of wild. I don't watch it personally. I just, there's a big time former UFC fighter in BKFC I'll watch, but I don't watch very often. Like I'll see Ben Rothwell's fights and when Artem used to fight over there, but that's about it. Anyways, though, Franco has still been very active fighting BKFC. It's not like he loses in BKFC. He's undefeated over there. There's he lost back in, that's not specifically BKFC. He's never lost at the bare knuckle fight championship promotion. So that means something. He's taking on a guy here who, again, is 9-5 in Najid, who has never been knocked out, purely, jiu-jitsu guy for the most part. And I assume he's going to try to take down Franco in this fight. I don't think he's going to be successful at that. You're 40 years old. How are you improving at this point in your career? I don't know. Najid, back-to-back fights, L's in PFL, losing to Daniel Masili and in Ibrahim Mane. Last win for him came back in 2021 by guillotine choke. Prior to that, lost to Umar Hussein in UAE Warriors as well. Yeah, guys, there's just not a lot of winning going around Yacine Najid at this point. So I got to go with the heavy favorite in this one in the Argentinian now training out of Spain and Franco El Rey de la Calle, Del Calle in Franco Tenaglia. I'm going to take him to win this fight by first round knockout against a 40-year-old grappler who has not won in 4 years. Give me Franco by first round knockout. We move on now to our featured fight of the night in the lightweight division as Alexander Shabliy gets Okaiden Duque again in the feature bout. Duque is from Spain, 39 years of age, a lot of pro fights, 27 of them professionally. Guys, he's outmatched in this fight. That's the truth. I don't love the fight for Duque here. Shabliy's good. Guys, Alexander Shabliy's lost one fight in Bellator. This is his first fight in the PFL. But he's lost one fight ever in Bellator. It is to Usman Nurmagomedov, who has never lost. Usman Nurmagomedov, who's 21-0. That is Shabliy's only L. He was supposed to fight in the PFL tournament, and he's supposed to fight against Brent Primus, obviously the most recent tournament in 2025. Well, they've gotten rid of that format now because PFL's just decided, you know what? We're gonna be Bellator now. So, sure, but why not? Shabliy wins his last fight. Was supposed to fight, Brent Primus. He withdraws from the fight. Prior to that, lost to Usman Nurmagomedov, but prior to that, was on a huge run. And the run that he went on in Bellator up until this title fight was just phenomenal. Beats Alfie Davis by decision, beats Bobby King. Alfie Davis obviously just got a shot at Usman Nurmagomedov after he pulled off the huge upset over Gadzi Rabadanov. Shabliy beats Davis, beats Bobby King, knocks out Brent Primus, beats Tafik Musayev, who's now in the UFC, body kicks Tafik Musayev. Really weird stoppage. I was at that fight right in San Jose, and Shabliy hits Musayev. We all in the crowd thought it was just a shot to the nuts, and Musayev is selling it like it is. They go to the replay, and they say, no, that's a clean shot. Referee tells Musayev, okay, get up. You got to start fighting. Let's go. Herzog's the referee, and Musayev says, no, either he kept protesting that he thought he got hit in the nuts, or he was just done. I don't know. Musayev loses. It's a TKO victory for Shabliy. Turns that into a victory against Patricky Pitbull, obviously right in the third round of the finals of the tournament. Wins, then gets the fight against Nurmagomedov, loses by decision. No shame in that. Usman Nurmagomedov is really good at fighting. He gets El Paye and Akudan Duque in this fight. Duque, this is his third fight under the PFL/Bellator banner. Last fought in, I think it was PFL, or was Bellator last? It was PFL. Last fought in PFL in 2023, beating Alexander Chizayev. Again, a talented guy. It's just, I believe he's overmatched. Fought in Bellator, I guess, a while ago. Regardless, I think he's overmatched in this fight. I think he's heavily overmatched against a really good fighter in Shabliy. I think Duque is obviously going to have the grappling advantage, but Shabliy's defensive wrestling is not that bad, and I just question, again, how Duque is going to be able to take Shabliy down. I get it, hometown guy in Spain, but I think Shabliy wins. Shabliy's talented. Again, the only loss ever in Bellator, and now obviously in the PFL is Usman Nurmagomedov. Prior to that, you got to look to his last loss back in ACB in 2016. It is difficult to put this guy away because of the all-around striking game he's got. Again, TKOing Tafik Musayev, knocking out, putting down Brent Primus. Tricky Pitbull, who cares? But the Alfie Davis victory continues to age better and better for Shabliy at this point in time. Duque, again, if he can get the fight down and keep Shabliy on his back, maybe there is obviously a potential for a victory here. But at the same time, we got to recognize Shabliy's 32, Duque's 39. Again, at 39, how much better are you truly getting at this point in your career? I just can't tell you. Likely not. You've already reached your peak. I mean, there are the rare, obviously, circumstances where that's not the case, like Randy Couture, but that was up at 205 and 265 pounds, not at 155. I'm going to go Alexander Shabliy to beat Akudian Duque. I think Shabliy will find that finish. I think eventually, again, Duque, once he's not able to get a takedown, is just going to succumb to the pressure and the striking game out of Shabliy. And I'm going to go with the Russian Shabliy to beat the hometown Spanish fighter in Duque. Alexander Shabliy, second round TKO. Once Duque's not able to get that takedown, it will likely be all but over. Give me Shabliy, second round TKO. On to our co-main event as we move on now to the featherweight division as AJ McKee takes on Adam Borics. Huge fight in the featherweight division in terms of the PFL's rankings, right? Shabliy, I forgot to mention Shabliy. Shabliy's fifth currently at lightweight, obviously taking on the unranked Duque. In terms of 145, this is 2 versus 4. AJ McKee currently the second ranked fighter in the PFL's featherweight division. Obviously, number 1 in the rankings is Timur Hizraev, not the champion, but he's just number 1. And obviously, number 4 in the rankings currently is Borics. It's a good fight, right? McKee, 23-2 as a pro. All of his fights, obviously, under both Bellator and PFL. He is coming off a win in his last fight over Akhmad Magomedov. Ends up winning that fight by decision, because prior to that, right, ran into a very tough guy in Paul Hughes, where he ultimately lost by split decision. And we've talked about the Paul Hughes problem for a very long time at this point. Where does Paul Hughes go? You're stuck in PFL. You've already fought Nurmagomedov twice. They've already done that fight multiple times, and he's lost both times. Now you're capped at just being the number 2 guy in PFL. Again, that's a story for another day, but I never understood the decision. Again, I support the PFL. I like the UFC a little bit more, whatever. Like, I watch the PFL. I just don't know why Paul Hughes would go here instead of the UFC. That's neither here or there, though. This specific fight, AJ McKee and Adam Borics. Borics himself is coming off a win over Jeremy Kennedy, won a PFL regular fight, as a showcase fight, after he got eliminated from the tournament in the first round, getting knocked out by Jesus Pinedo, who ended up losing in the championship bout to Movlid Khabilayev. Recently, though, Pinedo just lost as well to Salamat Izbuleyev, who is now ranked 5th in the rankings. Wait, how is Salamat ranked under Pinedo in the rankings, even though he just beat Pinedo? How does that one make sense? Can anyone explain that one to me? PFL. Anyways, AJ McKee is expected to win this fight. We don't have odds yet, but I got to imagine McKee's going to be around -300 for this fight. Big victory over Magomedov. He's won 3 of 4 going into this bout, beating Sidney Outlaw in his final Bellator fight, then beat Clay Collard by first round submission with the triangle armbar, and ran into Paul Hughes. What gets forgotten about in that fight is that fight's extremely close. And you could have given the fight to McKee, but obviously they give it to Hughes, and that set up for, obviously, the massive fight against Usman Nurmagomedov. But I think McKee beats pretty much everyone else at 145. I think if you give him, now that he's down at 145, obviously, I think kind of beats everyone in this weight class. I mean, he's lost once ever at 145 pounds, and I always thought the decision for McKee to go up was confusing. You lost to Patricio Pitbull after winning the first fight in potentially the biggest Bellator fight of all time in the Fabulous Forum in Inglewood, California. You beat Pitbull the first time, you knock him down, then you sub him with the guillotine. It was phenomenal. Then you lose the second fight in San Jose, and then after that, you go up to 45 for no reason, so to 55 for no reason, because you didn't want a third fight, I don't know. He beat Spike Carlo at 55, he went to the Bellator Rising card, beat Roberto de Souza, beat Sidney Outlaw at 55, beats Collard at 55, and then fights Hughes at 55, loses. But he goes back down to 45, and he beats Magomedov and looks really good against Magomedov. Why wasn't he always here? He's never lost at 45 in his career other than one fight in a 5-round decision to Pitbull. I mean, I have to imagine the winner of this fight is going to fight Hizraev, and the winner of that fight, obviously, is going to be the PFL champion. I have to imagine that's the direction in which they're going in, I think, because obviously Khabilayev is suspended, and Pinedo just lost to Izbuleyev. I think it has to be Hizraev and McKee for the belt next, right? Because McKee's going to walk through Adam Borics, in my opinion. I think he will. McKee, on the feet and on the ground, he will have an advantage. He's better everywhere than Adam Borics, in my opinion. This is 30-27 AJ McKee. I don't think it's all that competitive of a fight. This is a levels one, in my opinion. AJ McKee, again, at 145 pounds, has been dominant throughout his career. Just because he lost one fight to a very good Patricio Pitbull, even at Pitbull's age at the time, I still think McKee dominates a lot of guys at 145. Him versus Hizraev will be a really good fight if it happens. I think that'll be close. I think I'd probably very slightly side still with the Mercenary and AJ McKee. So that'll be a fight that happens when it happens, but right now I'm going McKee to beat Borics by decision. On now to our main event as we go to the middleweight division for the PFL Middleweight Championship. The champion, the nickname is the Spaniard, Costello van Steenis takes on the assassin from England, from Birmingham, in Fabian Edwards. This is a rematch of their initial fight in 2020. It was about that was won by Costello van Steenis. Okay, it's a split decision victory for Van Steenis. He kind of runs out of gas as that fight goes on, because the third round ends, and the final 3 minutes of that third round is Fabian Edwards on top of Costello Van Steenis. Van Steenis goes for a takedown. Fabian Edwards kind of reverses him as Van Steenis is going for the takedown. Edwards ends up on top, and he rides out that third round on top of Van Steenis. Ultimately, the split decision goes to Van Steenis. That was like the Bellator Euro Series thing that they were doing, obviously, during the pandemic in a fully, empty arena. But Van Steenis got by. He did do solid work in the first couple rounds, right? Is competitive on the feet with Edwards striking-wise. Second round gets a takedown and holds Edwards down. The third round is an Edwards round because of how he finishes the round. Again, a very competitive fight. Comes down to how you score the first. Obviously, they go in the direction of Van Steenis. Since that fight, Van Steenis has obviously gone on a run. He did lose to Douglas Lima, but then won back-to-back fights against Gregory Babinet and then Joao Vitor Dantas. And then recently, obviously, had that phenomenal fight against Johnny Eblen in Africa. A fight where Eblen is dominating early. First two rounds are all Johnny Eblen. And then that third round happens, and Van Steenis starts to take over on the feet, starts to do work. Eventually, he's the guy that ends up on top, and he's the one, finding himself in top positioning against Eblen late in that fifth round. Obviously, Eblen lands a takedown late in the fifth round. He's losing likely on the feet. Eblen lands a takedown. Van Steenis flips him, gets a reversal, ends up on top, and takes Eblen's back and chokes him out and puts him out cold with 9 seconds to go. Legitimately, one of the best fights in 2025 that just honestly doesn't get talked about because, well, it's in the PFL. But Van Steenis' run recently has been just great. Again, the Babinet finish, good win by Von Flue. It was oddly enough a number one contenders fight. Why did Bellator put that on that fight? I don't know. Van Steenis obviously had to fight again once he got to PFL. He beat Joao Dantas, even though PFL was running Bellator at the time, but whatever. And then he beat Eblen. Phenomenal win, come from behind victory. Again, how is the scorecards going to work? I don't know, but Eblen was obviously winning early, and as that fight went on, Van Steenis got better. Again, remember that first Edwards-Van Steenis fight about how Edwards won as the fight went on? It's not going to happen now. It's not going to happen. Van Steenis is so much better than he was back in 2020. And you can say, yes, Edwards is much better than he was in 2020 as well, but Edwards has been given 2 title fights since that fight happened, right? That fight happens back in 2020. I will say Edwards is a very active guy. Fought Austin Vanderford, got out-wrestled, beat Lyoto Machida in a layup fight against old man, Machida, beats Charlie Ward, beats Gegard Mousasi, lost to Johnny Eblen by TKO in their title fight, beats Aaron Jeffrey, gets another title fight, loses to Johnny Eblen, and then goes on his run last year in the PFL tournament. I have to give Edwards credit here. The only way he could have got back to the top of the weight class and potentially another title fight was win the tournament, and he did exactly that. Beats Impa Kasanganay and knocks out Kasanganay in the second round with a flying knee. Beats Josh Silveira by decision. A lot of people can do that. And then knocks out Dalton Rosta with a head kick to win the championship. Again, headshot, bang, just like his brother Leon. Great. He's not going to be able to land that shot against Van Steenis. Van Steenis is he's such a better striker than that first matchup, and his striking has evolved throughout his career, where, again, you are comfortable with Van Steenis on the feet, but grappling-wise and wrestling-wise, again, if Van Steenis obviously is going to try to win this fight at home, the clearest pathway to victory is wrestling Fabian Edwards. We've seen Edwards be on the ground so many times over the course of his career. I believe that is wide open for Van Steenis in this fight, and I do believe once he gets Edwards down, it's going to be a long night for Fabian Edwards, because, again, we've seen Eblen do it multiple times. We saw Austin Vanderford do it, and yes, that first initial fight between Edwards and Van Steenis did end the fight with Edwards on top. Guys, Van Steenis 5-6 years later is just another animal at 33 compared to what he was at 27, 28 years of age. Van Steenis, again, the ability to go beat Eblen, a guy that, again, Edwards beat twice, and I understand MMA math doesn't always work like that. Just because Van Steenis beat Eblen and Eblen beat Edwards means that Van Steenis has to beat Edwards. It doesn't always work like that, but in terms of, thinking about these guys on levels, yeah, Van Steenis is just on the higher level. And again, good for Edwards for winning all those 3 fights in a row, winning the PFL tournament championships, and now combine the belts with the main champion, obviously, in Van Steenis, but this is just too much. It's just too much for Edwards. Steenis will be able to win. I think they are competitive on the feet, not to the point where like, oh, if Edwards just can keep this fight standing, he's going to win. No, it's not like that. Steenis is a decent striker. Grappling wise too, and wrestling wise, Steenis has a complete edge over Fabian. Not unlike Dalton Rosto, who couldn't take Edwards down or hold him down. Steenis will have this fight down. I think he's going to submit Edwards eventually. I think he's going to break Edwards. Steenis does throw punches once he gets top positioning. And again, I'm telling you, this is a much different fight than that last encounter that we had in 2020, which, by the way, even though it might not have been the most impressive victory for Steenis, and if that fight goes 5, Edwards wins it, Steenis is ultimately still the fighter who comes away with the victory. So in the main event, I have to go with the Spanish fighter in Costello Steenis in his rematch against Fabian Edwards 6 years later. I do believe he still ends up on top with the victory. I'm going to go 4th round submission for Costello Steenis. I think eventually he will break Edwards, and the difference again between that initial fight is Steenis' gas tank is so much better, and he's just an all-around much more developed fighter now against Edwards. And not to say Edwards hasn't improved either, but I really like how Steenis has been fighting recently, and I do believe he's going to go out and beat and submit Fabian Edwards, making Edwards now 0-3 in PFL/Bellator championship fights. Well, actually, he beat Rosta, so 1-3, but it feels like Steenis is the champion because he really is. So as a challenger, I believe Edwards is going to go to 0-3. Give me Steenis to retain the title, 4th round submission. Folks, thank y'all for watching our PFL Madrid full card predictions, again with Costello Steenis and Fabian Edwards in the main event. If you have not yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back tomorrow for more, back on Thursday, for our UFC best bets. If you want to see PFL best bets, let me know. If not, we'll be back for next week, PFL Pittsburgh, with Johnny Evelyn and Brian Battle in the main event for the Professional Fighters League. Folks, thank y'all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba, forever.